me just, yay! So it is my privilege and honor to present to you today, I want to say illustrious, but I don't think he'd really go for that word. Fabulous, fantastic, Reverend Dr. Jerry Troyer. I'm going to read you just a little bit about him. He's been a student of New Thought for more than 25 years, and he's been a minister for 15 years. He serves as the president of our organization we belong to, ANT, an affiliated New Thought network. So we're really blessed by having his presence here anyway. He was with us 6 years ago, and that was incredible. That was incredible. We were in a different place, everything was different, but now everything is the new different, the new same. It's always going to be that way. So Jerry works, and I love this. I support it, I love it, and I want us as Joyful Gathering with Reverend Barb, I'm making this now, I want us to support Reverend Jerry Troyer's youth. He supports this, what is it, Urban Street Angels in San Diego. He supports the homeless youth who have no place to go. I mean, I'm just blown away by his dedication and the organization that he represents, helping these children, really, you know, young adults, children, a place to stay overnight, a food, a community. So Joyful Gathering will be supporting that. I'm just blown away. He's the author, my New York comes in, the author of the acclaimed book. He's got this incredible book, Coming Out to Ourselves, Admitting, Accepting, and Embracing Who We Truly Are. So, without going on any further, it's my pleasure to welcome you, Reverend Dr. Jerry.
Stop that, it's not time yet. Good morning again, dear ones. It's so great to be with you this morning. I forgot to mention when I was talking before about Anton, one of the things we do every month is to host a speaker series, which is a conversation the last Thursday of the month at noon Eastern Time. It is open to you, open to everyone, and we have different key leaders in New Thought and authors and speakers and so forth as our guests, as divine timing would have it. This month, which is it'll be the 30th of September, yes, and Reverend Dr. Carol Lawson, who many of you know, will be hosting, and she will be interviewing me. So if you're available, again, the last Thursday of the month at noon, go to our website, www.newthought.org, and there's more information and the link to Zoom and all the rest of that. All right. So my topic for this morning is honoring and celebrating diversity and keep your fork. I have to tell the story. So when we were at the Anson Conference 2 years ago, one of my jobs, and it has been for the last couple of years, has been to be the auctioneer. We do an auction and raffle every year, and we just have amazing fun at our auction, and one of the items that we auctioned off was me. And that I would come to your center and do the Sunday morning talk and the workshop and all the rest of that. And Reverend Margaret very graciously was one of the people who won. And so I've been gonna come see you for just about 2 years. And so I'm just so excited to finally have the opportunity. Slightly off the subject, amazing music so far this morning. Thanks all three of you. So honoring and celebrating diversity. When we hear the word diversity, very often we think of race and background. We think of religious background. We think of sexual orientation. But this morning I want to talk about diversity in our life experiences. I'm so glad you're with me today because I'm going to talk about things that we don't usually talk about. And I love that. I just love to stir the pot just a little, as it were. So in this teaching that we call religious science or new thought, we tend to focus on the positive, that all is well, that everything is in divine order, that everything is as it should be, that there's a reason for everything. And we absolutely know that's the truth, that everything is in divine order, that it is, and all the rest of those things are truth. But the fact may be very different. We go through things in life. We go through death and loss and heartbreaking experiences. And how often do we try to just use the magic wand? Well, it's all good. Well, it's all in divine order. Well, everything is as it should be. And again, it is, but it doesn't feel like that. So we're going to talk this morning, and this is a shameless advertisement. Starting at noon, we're going to do a workshop and do a deeper dive into allowing ourselves to feel what we feel, allowing ourselves to grieve, to feel the loss, to feel the anger, to feel the hurt, because you have to feel it so you can heal it. There is a Zen saying that you might have heard, "May we exist like a lotus, at home in muddy water. Thus we bow to life as it is." So in no way am I suggesting that we stay in the muddy water, but that we allow ourselves to be there so that we can experience our experiences, feel our feelings, and move forward. Because this thing called life is joy and passion and wonder and delight and lusciousness and heartbreak and loss. It's the chocolate with the lemon. It's the wonderful sweetness with the maybe bitterness. But that's this thing called life. I love the Golden Girls. I have a dear friend in Knoxville who also loves the Golden Girls, and so whenever I'm with him, we trade lines from the show back and forth. If you have a favorite show and a dear friend, you might do that. And we always joke about the real estate in our brains that we've taken up with lines from the Golden Girls. We could be curing diseases and healing the world and all the rest of that, right? But isn't it funny the things we remember? I bet pretty much all of us could burst into the Pina Colada song. Couldn't you? Right? Yeah? We remember fun things and silly things and goofy things and painful things and heartbreaking things. And so often they come back to not haunt us, but just remind us, until we allow ourselves to feel what we feel and heal them. Brené Brown is one of my favorite authors, and in the book, The Gifts of Imperfection, she writes, "Owning our story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing that we will ever do." And she writes about the experience of perfectionism. Charming and sparkling, and you might do this, I do this some days. Everything's wonderful, Charming and sparkling, rainbows and teddy bears, everything is delightful. Don't tell anybody, but I'm not always charming and sparkling. That's, that's our shadow, that piece that we don't want to look at, which is a talk for another Sunday, so we'll talk about it some other time. She goes on to write, perfectionism is not the same thing as striving to be your best. Perfectionism is not about healthy achievement and growth. Perfectionism is the belief that if we look perfect, live perfect, and act perfect, we can minimize or avoid the pain of blame, judgment, and shame. But it's a shield. Perfectionism is a 20-ton shield that we lug around thinking it will protect us, when in fact, it's the thing that's really preventing us from taking flight. Do we allow ourselves to grieve? Do we allow ourselves to feel the hurt and the loss and the anger? Or do we just cover it up with those statements that we talked about before? Maybe it's the loss of a job. Maybe it's the change in a relationship. Maybe it's someone's death. All of these things in this experience called life. We're back together again, which is a wonderful thing. But we're still rebuilding, we're still re-emerging, we're still growing and changing and getting back to normal. And it's been, can you believe it's been 18 months, 16, 18 months? My mother passed away the beginning of last year, and I bet there was loss in your family or close friends as well, and we weren't able to grieve like we wanted to. We wanted to get together, we wanted to cry, we wanted to have that experience, and we couldn't. So there's those experiences that we weren't able to have. We missed births, we missed graduations, we missed weddings, all of those things. Yesterday was September 11th, 20 years. And I was watching one of the local news stations last night, and they were saying, and this really touched me, that I was in San Francisco, and so I was watching everything on television, and oh my goodness, and so forth. But that was a very different experience for you if you were here, because it was just down the road. And so often, and we'll talk about this afternoon, we say, well, I understand how you feel. No, you don't. No, you don't. So I honor wherever you were and whatever your situation was on that day 20 years ago. I honor you and your path for that and that healing experience. So, Jerry, how in the world did you come up on this idea and this topic to talk about? Because sometimes we're going for the Kleenex box because this isn't not what we were thinking we were going to talk about. Well, 3 years ago next month, my husband passed away, died, made his transition, whatever term you want to use, in the airport in Houston, on the way home from the Anton conference in Kansas City. He had colorectal cancer and had been doing really well in the chemo with the tumor shrinking, but if you've ever had the experience, you know that chemotherapy can do terrible things to the rest of the body. And so he died in the airport. And so went through the process of, so what do you do when somebody dies in one state that they don't live in? So I went through that process of making the phone calls and the arrangements, and I got home with the luggage, mine and his. And I came home to the empty house, and I started to grieve. And my ego said, no, it's all in divine order. No, everything is as it should be. No, no, everything is perfect. And so I really had this almost a little bit of a battle with myself, recognizing that as a good minister and practitioner, not only was it okay, but it was necessary for me to feel those feelings, to grieve that. And if you've had this experience or something like it, you know that we don't just wave the magic wand, because months and years and decades, perhaps, we get the glimpse of that grief and that loss and that sadness. So often we label our emotions as good and bad, that it's joy and wonder and passion and compassion and all those things are good, and anger and grief and loss and frustration and all those other resentment are bad. But what if we could remove the labels and just recognize, I'm feeling this right now. Not forever, but allow ourselves to feel what we feel. Because when we gloss over these feelings, we can lead to two terms that you might or might not have heard before: spiritual bypass and toxic positivity. Have to come to the workshop. Noon this afternoon, and we'll talk more about both of those. We'll be done by 1:45, so the Eagles should be in halftime or thereabouts on their way to kicking the soup out of the Falcons. So we'll get you home. We'll get you home in time for halftime.
Okay.
Do you have a junk drawer?
Yeah.
Or a junk closet? Or a junk storage space? Or a junk room? So many of us do, and you don't have to admit it if you don't want to, it's okay. But that's where the switch plates from the paint job before last still are. That's where and you get to fill in the blank, there's all that stuff, and I don't know what to do with it, and so I'm just gonna cram it in the junk drawer. And every once in a while, as you're rummaging through, something comes up to the top. So it is so very often with our emotions. I'm not going to look at this. I'm not going to look at this anger. I'm not going to look at this loss. I'm just going to stuff it down in my emotional junk drawer. And then something happens. And somebody cuts you off on the turnpike. Or somebody says something that just gets you. Or you hear a song or watch a movie or something, and it triggers that emotion that you weren't able to look at. And what happens? There was a full box of Tasty Cakes there. Where did it go? There was a full container of Ben & Jerry's. Where did it go? I don't know about you, but sometimes I take my emotions out on something yummy. Or the bag of Cheetos, or somebody's at BJ's or Costco trying to find their membership card, and they're parked crossways in the entryway, and you're just getting in there to get a couple of things, and you just go crazy, and that anger comes back. One of my favorite authors, Debbie Ford, wrote, "What we can't be with won't let us be." It all requires forgiveness, but not until we're ready. The other workshop that I just have birthed with a great deal of help of the universe is about the process of forgiveness. So next time I'm with you, being positive, next time I'm with you, we can talk about the process of forgiveness, because very often we use the magic wand for that too, even before we're ready. I love Facebook. I'm not a stockholder. I have no financial dealings with Facebook, but there's the most amazing stuff. And if it's not amazing, just keep scrolling. Just keep scrolling. But I'd like to share a quote with you that I found on Facebook that just covers it so nicely. Life is amazing, and then it's awful, and then it's amazing again. And in between the amazing and the awful, it's ordinary and mundane and routine. Breathe in the amazing, hold on through the awful, and relax and exhale during the ordinary. That's just living. Heartbreaking, soul-healing, amazing, awful, ordinary life. And it's breathtakingly beautiful. Sometimes, and I should tell you, my husband, and some of you might remember either meeting him at an Anson conference or he was with me when we were with you 6 years or so ago. We had been together for 33 years, and I'm of a certain age that, so now you're a widow, and will I ever find love again? Is there anybody out there that will ever love me? And if you've been through this experience, you know that we have that, you know? Where will I go? What will I do? Will I find another job at my age? Just all of those things. Will I be okay? We will, because we can remind ourselves to keep our fork. There's a story of an older lady that met with her minister in making preparations for her memorial service when she passed. And she said, she went through everything and the music and who was going to be there and all the rest of that, and she said, and I want to be buried with a fork. And he asked, why in the world would you want to be buried with a fork? And she said, because growing up, after we made it through the meatloaf and the boiled Brussels sprouts and the turnip, I know, right? And the turnip and all the stuff that we didn't want to eat, we were told to keep our fork. Because something wonderful is coming. Dessert is coming. So we know that as we go through these experiences, we must first allow ourselves to go through these experiences. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I don't have to stop and build a condo. We keep walking through the muddy water, processing the experience so that we can get to the other side with our fork, knowing something wonderful, something different, because it won't be the same. And actually, I'm really happy to tell you that I have somebody wonderful in my life now, and thank you very much. And it's not the same. It's very different, but it's wonderful. So we allow ourselves to be open to what we feel, to process it through, because if we stay closed, there's no opportunity for that new love, for those new experiences to come into our hearts. So we're going to talk about a whole lot of this afternoon at noon, and I hope you'll decide to be with me. I want to close with this amazing quote. This is from the book How to Find God in Everything by Amoda May Javan. Every experience of your life is a calling from God. Every experience, whether it be pleasurable or painful, is an invitation to embrace the fullness and depth of this moment as it is now. Deep intimacy with this moment offers the promise of liberation. It is an invitation to your true nature. Beyond appearances, beyond what comes and goes, is the you that does not change. The you that is neither this nor that, but simply is. You cannot find this part by looking into the future or dwelling in the past, because time is an illusion that takes you away from the reality of now. The truth of who you are can only be found in the absolute presence of this moment. In this perfect moment, you are at one with yourself, at one with life and at one with God. For God is your essential nature and mine and everyone else's too. So with that in mind, would you join me in the light for just a moment? So in the peace and the quiet of this moment, we allow ourselves to be reminded of our oneness with the God presence, with one another, and with all of life. And we give great thanks for this beloved, joyful community, for this amazingly beautiful place and the opportunity to be together in person for many of us. We give thanks for this thing called life, for the meatloaf and the Brussels sprouts, as well as the lemon bars and the chocolate cream pie. For it all, for the love and the joy and the passion, for the loss and the grief and all of it, knowing that it's just this thing called life. We give thanks for the love, for the joy, for the abundance, and moving forward, we choose to keep our fork. So for this place, these people, this wonderful congregation, for our time together, we give great thanks. Together we say, and so it is.
Yes.